So the essence of the Dharma teaching, the essence of the wisdom, the transcendental wisdom teaching, is the direct seeing of the truth in regard to our identity. It's the direct seeing of the truth that who we take ourselves to be is a mirage. And how do you tell that a mirage is a mirage? As you get closer to it, you see that it's just water vapor. And the same thing is true with our supposed identity. If you look closely, it becomes apparent. If you trust your own seeing, it becomes apparent that the freedom that we all seek, the freedom to be happy, the freedom to be peaceful, the freedom to be satisfied, is a function of recognizing the absence of who we take ourselves to be. The suffering that human beings experience is primarily a function of there being a sufferer to suffer. And if it is the case that who we take ourselves to be is nothing but an illusion, and the recognition of that illusion and the practice of paying attention and being present to our lives so that we could recognize the process of the mind generating this illusion, over time we can train the mind to begin to be consistent with the way things really are. Because what the mind does is it produces the idea that you have a self. It produces the idea that your personality actually exists. And there's a consensual agreement among all of humanity that that's true, and we produce evidence for that like driver's license, pictures of our body, personal histories, stories, unique stories, and all that jazz. But that's like looking at the mirage from a distance in reality. And if you look closely to see what does the evidence say? Is there evidence that who I've taken myself to be, the one that suffers, the one that wishes life was easier, the one that's trying to be happy, pursuing happiness, the one that gets pissed off, the one that gets confused, the one that suffers the emotional states, the fear states, the anxious states, the angry states. If it's possible to pay attention in such a way where you can see clearly that that one does not exist, and you trust your own direct experience of that, then you can begin to practice paying attention in such a way where you can, over time, diminish the reality of that existence. So that instead of there being someone who is separate from reality, someone who is separate from everything else, the subject that's separate from the object, we can begin to gradually realize what the teachings tell us, that it's all subject, there is no object. That what you're looking at through your eyes when you look at the room we're sitting in here appears to be separate from you. But what the wisdom teachings tell us is you're looking at a movie playing on a screen the same way you look at a movie playing on the screen in the movie theater. And the movie you're looking at that's playing, right, is a projection of your mind. And what I mean by that is you learn that all this is this. When you were a baby and you got language, one thing at a time you learned about what existed, didn't you? That's a chair, this is the floor, this is the ceiling, that's your body, and the body is you, right? And the baby is completely empty. It's open to receive all this information, right? In order for it to become part of our tribe that believes that what we're looking at here is separate from what we are. But what the teachings tell us is if you practice meditation and you come to accept the direct understanding of your true nature, which is that what you are is awareness itself, and that awareness is the screen. And you don't see the screen when you look at what you're looking at, the same way you don't see the screen when you're in the movies, right? But what the wisdom teachings tell us is the screen is awareness, and the screen is empty, and what's appearing on the screen is a projection of our mind, which is our conditioning, onto the screen, and that's what we see. So the awareness that we are and what we see are the same thing. It is the awareness manifesting itself in this appearance. And this appearance is being generated by your mind and your brain based on your conditioning. And because that's the case, the truth is that there is no separate self. There is really no personality. As Ramana Maharshi said in his teaching, one of the greatest non-dual teachers, what we're dealing with here is a presupposed non-existent self, a presupposed non-existent person that seeks freedom and peace and satisfaction for that non-existent person. I recommend that you remember that statement, right? Because that statement is what non-dual teaching is. It's basically saying that the reason that you and I are suffering is because we believe that the self-concept that we take ourselves to be actually exists when it doesn't exist. Another statement that I often repeat comes from the Course of Miracles, the summary statement in the beginning of the Course of Miracles. What is real cannot be threatened, and what is unreal does not exist. And if what is unreal is who we take ourselves to be all day long, right? You know, Paul Hederman, one of the things that Paul Hederman, a very powerful non-dual teacher, talks about is the fact that you can't outdraw the mind. You can't shoot fast. You can't shoot faster than the mind. What does he mean by that? What he means is that seeing is happening, right? And the mind says, I am seeing. It inserts the personality. It inserts the identity. I am seeing, right? Now there is this I that it says is seeing can't be found anywhere. It can't be found in your body, right? It's made up. It got made up when you were introduced to reality by your parents and they gave you a name, that's name, and they gave you a form, that's the body, name and form. Right? And from that day on, you went to school and you met other names and forms. Right? And so there's an agreement among everybody that what isn't real is real. And then as that unreal self attempts to live life and become happy or experience happiness, it constantly fails. How can something that doesn't exist be happy? Okay. So one of the things that the teachings tell us is that our true nature equals happiness. Our true nature is actually what happiness is. Sat Chit Ananda is the way it's talked about in the East. Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. And what it's saying is the fact of your existence as awareness is an experience of being happy. You get that? That's pretty simple, right? The fact of your existence as awareness is an experience of being happy. No matter what happens in the movie, right? The fact that you exist is the source of your happiness, not what happens, right? When you get indoctrinated or educated to believe that you're something that doesn't exist and you begin to pursue happiness, where are you going to pursue the happiness? In the world, right? I'm not happy. If I want to be happy, I have to get what I want in order to be happy. That's the understanding that everybody has. That's why money's so popular. Yeah. The more money I get, the more possibility for happiness there is, because with the money that I have, I can keep getting what I want. The problem with that, and people that have tons of money come to find this out, right, is that your life becomes getting what you want. Because every time you get what you want, that's not it for very long, then you have to get it again, right? So your whole life becomes a process of getting what you want. You never get there. You never get there. And the other thing that I think people who believe in that process of pursuing happiness discover is that the way they feel about the experience of existing as a personality is still a matter of suffering, no matter how much stuff they have. It's still a matter of suffering. They're not going to publicize that because they don't want anybody to find out how much they've invested their entire life in that isn't working. But like Paul Hederman says, the most important thing that you could come to understand out of the process of continuing to pursue happiness as who you think you are is the failure that it is. And if you get to a point where you recognize the failure that it is, then you may open yourself up to looking to see whether these wisdom teachings are a solution to that failure. And they are a solution to that failure because if you practiced through meditation to calm the mind and relax the body, all of the interference that's typically in the way, right? All of the constant thinking that's going on all the time, right? That's the lens that you're looking through all the time and the feelings that are being produced by that. If through meditation we're successful in calming the mind and relaxing the body, that may open up a possibility of seeing things as they are, so that the process of expecting life to produce happiness by getting what you want is seen for what it really is. And you begin to stop putting your money in that bank. So what is the source of happiness for people that believe in the idea that the pursuit of happiness is real? As long as the circumstances of my life are going the way I want them to go, I may not be happy, but I can at least experience some sense of safety and satisfaction. But for whom does that happen? How many human beings exist that their life is always going the way they want it to go? I haven't met any, I'm not one. Right? And so if that's not the case, it means to live your life with the understanding that what's happening, the circumstances of your life are the source of your well-being and happiness is a fool's way of living your life. That will never, ever work. Right? So one of the reasons that's the case is because of what they call in Buddhism impermanence, right? Everything is changing all the time, right? Your personality is changing all the time, isn't it? You know, what you think today, you didn't think yesterday. What you think tomorrow will be different too. It's changing right now as we sit here. The thought process is constantly playing, changing all the time. So do you want to depend on that for your well-being and happiness? What else is changing all the time? Everything is changing all the time. The world is changing all the time. Your body's changing all the time. Time is changing all the time. Is there anything that doesn't change? Is there anything that we can invest our attention, put our attention on, invest our well-being in that doesn't change so we can have somewhere to stand, so that we can experience something that's consistent, something that might be able to produce the experience of well-being and happiness that we want? And the answer to that can be found by paying attention and noticing that the awareness that you and I share never changes. It's always exactly the same. And so if you're going to invest in something to produce well-being, that might be the place to do it. If you look at awareness, which you can do because you're experiencing it right now, I like the way Mooji talks about this in his invitation, right? If you look at awareness, what do you see? It's always the same. Does it have a form? No. Does it have a shape? No. Does it change? No. Does it have an age? No. Is it a male or a female? No. Does it need anything? No. Does it want anything? No. It sounds like this awareness that we share is pretty much peaceful, content, and satisfied, doesn't it? Yeah. The problem is we don't experience ourselves as that. We continue to pay attention to the mental activity that's generating the idea that we're a physical body and a personality. And now, because we have this self-concept that we believe is real that's not real, we're subjected to ongoing suffering, because what happens is the mental state keeps producing expectations. It keeps comparing what's happening to what I want. It's comparing what's happening to what I think should be happening, what the mind tells me should be happening. And a lot of the time, they're different, aren't they? You know, when you're driving your car, you know, I noticed this the other day that, you know, I've been at this for a while, and many of you have been at this for a while, you know, and have been learning about these teachings, right? And one of the things that's important to understand about the mind is it's a program that will continue to play the same song, the same programming all the time, even if you know better, you know? When I am in the Wawa and I'm go to pay and there's somebody in front of me that doesn't start to take their money out until the products are already in the bag, no matter how much I know about the truth and about being peaceful and being resilient, you know, and accepting things as they are, my mind still says that person's an asshole. I can't do anything about it. So this is an important thing to understand, because one of the things, as you continue to learn about these teachings and do these practices, you may have expectations that your mind starts being different. Yeah? But the mind's a very stubborn program, right? And even though you know better, and this is why you have to have compassion for your mind and yourself, because even though you know better, when you walk into a supermarket or when you're driving your car, your mind will still continue to play the same reactive material. And so you shouldn't get upset about that, right? You should just realize that's the program playing. That's not reality, it's a program playing. I'm reality. I'm the one who can know that the person in front of me who's driving slow might be somebody's grandmother, not my mind, right? So you're the one that has to take responsibility for the mind. The mind is a conditioned reality, right, that's taking everything you ever learned and applying it to what's happening all the time. Right? And when what's happening doesn't match what you learned, you get upset. Why? Because it should be different than it is. I want it to be different than it is. And I'm going to keep working to keep changing things so it is different, until I get to a place where what's happening is providing what I want from what's happening. Good luck. As I have said here before, I can tell you one of the most expensive things in my life that I had to deal with by applying that philosophy is to pay the lawyers that I had to pay for the divorces that I went through. That's what's going to happen. If you keep thinking that you have to keep fixing and changing and moving the, thing, it's like, what's that saying? Rearranging the chairs on the Titanic? Yeah, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Right? That's a good metaphor, because that's actually what the case is. You keep changing what you're doing, right? More different and better, more different and better, right? If this wife doesn't work, I'll get another one, right? If this nose doesn't work, I'll get a nose job, right? This is how people are living their life. And it's commercially very successful, right? Billions and billions of dollars can be spent by people on changing the way they look, right? You want to look better, you want to look different, you want to look unique, you want to make a better appearance, be more acceptable to other people, right? So this is the situation we're in, and if you get to the bottom line, you realize that until you take responsibility for your mind, and until you start training that mind, right, 8 verses, until you start training that mind will torture you. And the worst part about it is you'll identify with it and think you're torturing yourself, and then you'll feel guilty about that, right? And it becomes a vicious cycle. you know? You helplessly follow your mental activity, you do things that it tells you to do, it causes negative consequences, you suffer those consequences, you feel guilty, and then you go back and do it again. It's an addiction. Any addiction is a repetitive behavior that has negative consequences, right? Thinking is the worst addiction that human beings could possibly ever have. And the worst part about it is they don't know they're addicted. They think the thoughts in their head are being fought. They think, human beings think the thoughts in their head are being fought by them, right? That makes you the devil in your own hell. So one of the first things that's important to recognize is that the thought activity that's occurring in your mind is not coming from you. If I ask you what you think, you have to look to see what the voice in your head says, right? Why do you have to do that if it's you? If you're the source of the thinking, why do you have to look to see what the thinking says to tell me what you think? That's what I mean when I say if you look closely, you can see the illusion. You can see the illusion. You can see what's not real. It's very simple. It's very simple. If you're doing walking meditation, you can take the opportunity to look and see what's real and what's not real. If you're doing walking meditation, what do I mean by that? When you're walking from one place to another during the day, see if you can remember to look and see the reality of what's actually happening. If you look and see the reality of what's actually happening, you'll see there's a body walking, right? And then there's an awareness of that, right? Where's the person? There's no person. It's that simple. There's no person, right? Now, if you ask somebody who's walking, they'll say, I'm walking because the mental activity outdrew you and put the I in. But there's no I, right? So as many teachers said, the freedom that is available in these teachings and practices is not freedom for you, it's freedom from you. So, any questions? But the thing about meditation is there are a lot of people who practice meditation for years and years and years and never realize that they have never actually meditated, because when you think that the one who's meditating is your personality, you're just verifying that the personality is real. Yeah. So there's no meditation. You know, meditation means that you move your attention from the thought process to the awareness of the body breathing. Awareness of the body breathing. There's no person there. There's no self there. Awareness and the body breathing. And when thinking happens, immediately the thinking will interject that there's a person sitting here meditating.
So if we think I am breathing, that's not good, because then we're injected.
Well, you see, the thing is this, that's just a conventional way of talking, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay? But if you understand the truth, you understand it's just a convention. It's not actually the case. There's nothing wrong with talking that way, because if you didn't talk that way, if you didn't talk that way, people think you're nuts. Yeah. You can't talk to people and say, my mind tells me that I am a person who thinks they're breathing. They'll look at you like my dog looked. You know, they'll turn their head and look at you like, I better get away from this person. Right? So you have to live in the world, you have to live in the world, but that doesn't mean that, you're in the world but not of the world. You have to live in the world. It doesn't mean that you have to be of this world. You can be of the world that's real. You can be of the world that's the truth. You can be of the world that allows you to experience your life in the zone. They talk about being in the zone. And not only talk about being in the zone, but they say that runners, long-distance runners, run because they want to experience the zone, right? What does that mean? They run until they get to a place where all there is the running. There's nobody running. And they feel high, right? The same thing would be true for all of us if we could be living our lives in that zone. There's nobody doing anything. There's just what's happening. There is no nouns. There's only verbs. There's just what's happening. And everybody you meet is you. Because the consciousness or the awareness that we are is literally and exactly the same here as it is there. There's 8 billion consciousnesses, right, that are just one consciousness. Because all those consciousnesses are exactly the same. Exactly the same. And if we were able to see each other that way, why, could there be war? There couldn't be war because you'd be killing yourself. Yeah. But living in the illusion, living in the dream that humanity lives in, war makes sense. Because subject and object, I'm the subject and you're the object. And if you threaten me, or if you're in the way of what I want, I'll get you out of the way of what I want. And without realizing it, when I do that, I'm killing myself. That's what Jesus meant when he said from the crucifix, forgive them for they know not what they do. They don't know what they're doing. They think they're a separate self, and there is no such thing as a separate self. That's non-duality.